as you can see, the scar is healing nicely, so it should be unnoticeable maybe after a few months. So thanks for all the well wishes and stuff. It was just a minor little cut. Welcome to the Reilly rhythms of the figure, and tried my best to show you guys how this works, and made a couple of mistakes, but you'll see. But anyway, the first pose, this one here, we're just doing it straight on, and then we're going to move on to the next one, which is a more dynamic twisting kind of a pose, and then finally kind of a straight on with one leg tucked in behind the other. So these are all three of these are just straight on poses, and which shows like it's a good example of how to use the Reilly method for the figure drawing. And I'm using smooth newsprint again. This is Pro Art, and the pencil I'm using is the Conte Alperis 1710B, sharpened to a nice fine tip, and then of course the Kneaded Eraser. So thanks again for watching. If you guys have any questions after the video, leave a comment and I'll get back to you. Thanks for watching, and thank you. Starting off with this very basic pose, standing directly in front of us, hands by our side, and just your basic standing pose. Not dynamic at all, but it's a good start for this description of the Reilly rhythms for the figure. So if we had our head here, and then we're going to pull down this rhythm for the neck muscles, the Sternocleidomastoid, and down to the pit of the neck, and then we'll do a wrapping, kind of like a C curve shape for the clavicle, and then a little bit top of the shoulder. And right about here you'll have the chromium process. That's that little bump of a bone right before you have the ball of the shoulder. That's where your clavicle and your chromium meet, and there's a little joint right there. So we use that as a reference point for this method. Let me move this over just a little bit, try to get them lined up. And also, you don't always have to measure how many heads the person is. It depends on what you like. But for this one, I'm just going to make it 7 heads, and then I'm going to divide that in half and find the crotch, which will be at 3.5. So if I come down here, it's going to run off the page, probably off the camera, barely, huh? So we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 1, 2, 3, and then half. Our crotch will be about right there. So we can just take these out. So I run a straight line from the pit of the neck all the way down to the crotch. And now we'll take the reference points from the chromium process, and we'll draw another reference line. I'm drawing it way darker just so it shows up on camera. I usually don't draw these rhythm lines that dark at all. And let's go ahead and pull a line down for the legs. And now from the side of the neck, we're going to pull a rhythm from the side of the neck to the hips. And it just depends on what method you're using. Like, there's different Reilly methods out there. It's hard to tell which is the original. I've seen this one where they pull from the neck to the crotch line hip right here, and I also see the one where they come up a little bit higher and they'll pull that rhythm to this point here. So it really depends on, I guess, what you like. I kind of prefer this one, the top line, but it really doesn't matter too much because they both work really well. So I'll just stick with the one that goes through the crotch. And we'll use this line here to find the hip bone. This is the great trochanter area. So then from that point, we can pull the line all the way down to the foot. Just have it come down to a point and run it past that line that you wanted it. It doesn't really matter because we can put the feet on top of that and be all good. So up here, we're going to start the rib cage on the upper body, the chest cavity. Just a very simple oval shape. And the rhythm for the inside cavity. You can even put the back rhythm if you want to kind of show that depth. But generally we just do the front one. And then for the arms, you have the ball of the shoulder. And then her arm comes down. Her hand's about right there. So that's just a very basic rhythm using the Reilly abstraction for the figure. And for the feet, you can take it further if you want. Maybe I'll just go ahead and do that. But let me talk about the hip actually. So the hip, there's actually, the hip bone is, I like to kind of think of it as like a heart shape. So it's very simplistic, but it works for me. And I've seen this before, and I really like it. There's different versions or different ways to use this. But right here, you have a point that shows up on the body, like the reference. You can see the hip bones. Like, let's say, she comes down here, and it catches that little bump on the hip bone, and then we'll come down here, and we'll catch that great trochanter. And let's cut the legs in half for the kneecap. And so right here I have the tensor fascia lata that kind of connects to, I think it's the Gertie's tubercle, which is basically on the tibia, next to the tibial tuberosity or whatever it's called. So that comes down here. So you can kind of see this shape developing, understanding that you got this point right here with the great trochanter where the hip bone comes in. If we can connect that to the knee. Like so. So these 2 points are really interesting, and they really help you. And if you'll see this hip bone curve around like this. And there's the iliac crest right here. This will be another point that you'll see on the body. And from there, you'll get the Sartorius, which comes down here on the other side of the knee and wraps like this. And this muscle kind of sits on top of all the other muscles in the leg, like the abductors, the gracilis, the vastus, and the so those, you'll see this furrow in pictures, especially like bodybuilders and stuff like that. So basically, these 3 points right here kind of create like a triangle, and you'll see those points in your model, and that'll help you get that shape of the body. So just to go back over what we did the start of the head. We came down to the pit of the neck with the Sternocleidomastoid rhythms. Then we did the sweep, the C shape for the clavicle. And we came over to the top and we found the chromium process, which is right here. And then we measured the heads and we decided to do 7 heads, divide that in half to 3.5 heads to find the crotch. So half the body. It's a good reference point. It's not always like that. It depends on your person, the model that you're doing. It's just like with the head abstractions, it really depends. But for just basic exercise, I like to divide it in half at the crotch. So from there, we take the straight line down the middle, and then from the chromium process, I take the 2 side rhythms, and then from the sides of the neck to the hips, all the way down to the great trochanter, which is right at the crotch line, right here. And then we did the ball of the shoulders, and then the sweeps of the arms, sweeps of the legs. And then I was just talking about the heart shape of the pelvis and the 3 points that will show up on the great trochanter, the hip bone right here, and the iliac crest comes down here. And you have these muscle attachments right here, like the Sartorius. And I just did basic structure of the femur. And yeah, so that's a basic Reilly plus a little extra, which is kind of helpful, those 3 points to know, especially when you're trying to map in a basic shape. But this is a very non-dynamic drawing, or pose I should say. So let's go ahead, well actually let's do the let's finish off with the rhythms for the breast here, which I almost forgot. And the Reilly rhythm is to take it from the pit of the neck and wrap around and create like this circle rhythm, and do the same for the other side. And you can bring those 2 together by another wrapping rhythm from the top side. So let's go ahead and go on to like a more dynamic pose, and we'll see how these rhythms here, the center line and from the chromium process and from the outside of the neck, those rhythms really help to find like the dynamic pose and stuff. So let's go ahead and do that next. We're going to do a much more dynamic pose, still standing, mostly facing forward. So let's start with the head. A little circle, and the jawline, which is like in a 3/4 pose. So that's close enough. Maybe a little ear, which we can't see because our hair is in the way. But not getting into the portrait on this, even though I really want to, automatically. So we have the head, and then the next thing is that sternocleidomastoid rhythm, the big neck muscle, and the other side wraps around here. So we have the pit of the neck, and then from this point we can just go ahead and put in our C curve for the clavicle. And because she's turning this way, the perspective will see much more of this side of the body than this side. So we have that perspective change. And I'm going to go ahead and measure out again the 7 heads, and then divide that in half to find the crotch. And it may not be what she is. She might be 8. She might be 6.5. But just for this drawing, I'm just going to make it 7. So I'm just going to come down and just using my pencil and my finger, just make those measurements. And see, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we'll put her somewhere down here, her feet. And so we'll find the crotch by going 3.5. So 1, 2, 3, And then we got the half. So I usually do this without making marks. I use my pencil or just eyeball it. And now I'm gonna try to find the crotch, if it's over this side or over this side, in relationship to the center of the face. So holding my pencil up, and it looks like it's slightly over. I'm going to exaggerate it just a little bit and make it right there. So that's the crotch, and we'll use that center line and see her upper body, her shoulders are back, and it's creating this really nice C curve. Something like that. And I have to make it a little bit more dark so you can see it on the camera. And then from those chromium process that we found, we can pull that line, and you can already see it's giving an indication of what the body's doing already. And that's why I really like this method. And then at this point, we can actually take this line here and just bring it all the way through to the bottom of her feet. And it looks like the backside of her heel. I'm taking my pencil, holding a plumb line, and trying to find where the back of her heel on that weight-bearing leg is positioned in comparison to, let's say, her shoulder. So let's go ahead and put the shoulders in. So it looks like it's just on the outside of her shoulder. So her weight-bearing leg, the heel, falls right about there. So we can take this rhythm, bring it all the way through and down. So now we have these three. So now we're going to use the side of the neck to find the hips. And before I do that, I'm going to find the angle of the hips. I'm looking at the crotch, and it looks like it might be about this angle. I'm just going to check that. And that's about right. So let's go ahead and put that angle line in. Very soft. And if you look at the shoulders, they also have that similar tilt, the opposite way though. Actually, it's a little bit more shallow. I think I have to bring this shoulder down a bit. No, it's pretty straight across actually. So sometimes it helps to find like these angles and how it's almost like when you're drawing the head, you're trying to find the head tilt using the cross of the face. Well, finding out where the shoulders are angled and the hips are angled helps a lot too. So having that information, now we can pull this line for the hips, the hip rhythm from outside of the neck all the way down to this crotch line. And I'll do the same thing for the other side, starting on the neck. And it looks like it might be about right there. And again, when you draw these at home, make these lines super soft as you can, because you'll change them quite a bit. They're only to be used as reference, and you'll build up structure around it. Let's see. So now we're going to pull all the way down this back side of the leg. Just go to a point. We can put the feet on later. And then this leg, let's measure where the outside of the heel is on the other foot and find that distance. This helps me a lot, because oftentimes, like if her leg is this far apart, I'll bring it in too too close and I'll stiffen up the pose. So that's a thing that happens to me a lot. So what I like to do is just measure that, and it looks like it's about this distance. It's always good to exaggerate just a little bit anyway in a figure, because the drawing gets, it just stiffens up more. So if you exaggerate it at the beginning, you'll have a more dynamic drawing. So something like that. So it doesn't look quite right to me, so I think I'm going to take this line out. Let's see. I think what would help is if I brought this line in, I had it too thick. And then bring this one over. That's why it's good to make these really light. So I think that's a lot better. So now we have the shoulders, we have the hips, the angle of the hips. I'm going to do the crotch angle. Here's the hips. Remember we had the great trochanter here. We had that heart-shaped hip bone. And then the iliac crest, those 3 points, that's right there. Let's go ahead and, at this point we can go ahead and put in the chest cavity, the rib cage, the upper body, and it's at an angle because she's arching. Her shoulders are pulled back. And now it's getting a little confusing looking with all the lines, but there's a rhythm here for the actual rib cage. And now we can put in the arms. It looks like a very basic shape. And her hand is about right here. And on this side, her arm is behind the body, then comes out. Something like this. So that's our, let's go ahead and put the feet in actually. Let's see, post up here. So feet are a pain in the ass a lot of times. They just take a lot of practice to try to like understand the structure of them and stuff. But I won't go into it too much here. I just want to get like a basic shape. The back heel comes over and wraps in. She's wearing high heels, so there's arch in her foot. And both her feet are pretty much lined up in this one. Let's clean that up. I definitely can use some practice on feet. So her heel is probably like here, something like that. Alright, let's go back up to, so this right here, what we have is the basic Reilly, right? We have the rhythm for the major muscles of the neck, the sternocleidomastoid. We found the pit of the neck, center line, a chromium process right here and right here. Those two lines come in. And then we have from the outside of the neck on each side to find the outside of the hips. Then we put the leg rhythms in. We had the angles of the hips, angles of the shoulders, and that pretty much gives you the overall pose, the overall feel of the pose. And then from here you can just keep, oh yeah, I almost forgot the rhythm of the breast again. So let's find the angle, pretty much like that. So from the pit of the neck, you come down, wrap around to the other side, try to find, keep them on the same rhythm. And then you can do a sweeping for the top, kind of show that connection to the body here. Sweep, sweep, something like that. And then you can come in and start working on the contour, adding in the different muscles. Sweep over the hip bone right there. It comes down. Then we have the gluteus maximus on the back side. You can kind of see it a little bit. It's like tucked behind her hand. If we take half the leg, we find the kneecap. Then we can find our insertion of that iliotibial band. Connects right there. And then we had that sweep of the iliac crest. We know the sartorius attaches right there and right here on the knee. And you can't see it in this picture, but the structure is like so. Wraps around. Looks like her vastus kind of, you can see that even in her what do you call it, tights. It actually shows up. It's pretty strong. She must do a lot of squats. And her calf muscle, just go over the interesting aspects of like the knee and the ankle is, let's see, how do I describe it? So it's like, see this, you have two vastus, one's lateral medial, and you have this shape, this angle, because the lateral vastus muscle sits a little bit lower than the medial, and that gives you that angle, and that angle also shows up in the calf muscle. So as this comes down, the calf peaks here, and the other side of the leg, the muscle peaks at the top, so it gives you these two angles. And for the ankle, it's actually the opposite. It goes this way. Did I just do it backwards? I think I did it backwards, yo. That's funny. Because, yeah, I did. So, never mind what I just said. I'm going to edit that out. It goes the other way. Shit. Is that right? That ain't right, is it? It is. Oh my god. How embarrassing. So yeah. So let's redo this. It's so embarrassing. So what I was trying to say is the medial vastus sits lower than the lateral. Now you're like, this guy doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. And then the calf muscle on this side sits higher. Yeah, that actually looks better. Jeez. So there you go. And then the ankle. The reason why I caught my mistake was because I know that the damn it, I tried to do it again. Because I know that the fibia sits lower than the tibia, and the fibia is on. It's this section right here, this bone, and then you have like the bigger tibia over here, right? So the fibia sits lower than the tibia. So if I was to actually draw these bones, the fibula actually means, it's like a Latin word, or I think it's Latin, but it actually means needle or brooch, because it's like this really thin bone, and it comes down. And then the tibia is another funny word. It actually means flute. So anyway, I don't know why I'm talking about that, but back to these angles, okay? I'm gonna really make those dark. So knee goes in, ankle goes up and in, down, up. Oh, that sucks. Anyway. So that you can, from that you can tell I'm a student. I'm not really happy with this center line, but let me move it over just a little bit. I want it to line up nice. Right there. Okay. And then the hip bones on this side. So we have the chest cavity coming down. And then the iliac crest on this side. That Sartorius would, if you could see it, would come right here. And then that iliotibial band. And then, dare I do this again with the angles? Let's see. And then the calf muscle here, and then on the far side. And the little kneecap. That was a disaster. That's funny. Yeah, so learning those angles helps a lot. And when you're doing a demonstration of them, it helps not to mess it up, but you know, it happens. Whatever. Oh god, that's funny. I just want to put a little eye socket right there. Maybe a little nose. Okay, so that's a more dynamic pose. You can see how it's like stiffer than the actual photo I did. And I think that might be because of the rhythm line for the hip. Like I should have really arched it way more and pushed her onto that weight-bearing leg much more. I can kind of probably fix that a little bit if I brought the upper body, the chest cavity, and made it a little bit smaller. And then maybe make her butt a little bit bigger. And that might help. Look like weight is more boom on that side. It's a little bit more dynamic. It's interesting how you can just change certain things. Like if you make the upper body smaller, then the hips will be much wider. So, man, the figure is really hard. It's I used to think the portrait was hard, but I feel like the figure is really difficult. The thing is though, like if you can't draw a portrait, if you can't draw the face, you can draw like a really beautiful figure, but if the face on the figure is not good, then the figure's not gonna be good either. It's kind of depends upon a good portrait. But then again, if you have a good face and the body looks kind of funny, that's not good either. So they kind of depend on each other, I suppose. Let me just kind of trying to clean these lines up a little bit. Let's get her little thumb. All right. So I hope I didn't confuse you too much on that mistake with the angles of the knee and the ankle. And so just to talk about that is, so you have two bones. You have the tibia and then you have the fibia. The fibia is really small and it sits on the lateral side, which is the outside of the body. And it sits lower than that big bone, the tibia, on this side. So that's why it creates that angle. And for this angle, we're talking about the calf muscles, which this side peaks higher than this side. And for the top of the knee, we got the two vastus, the lateral and then the medial. And the lateral sits higher than the medial. So there you go. Okay, actually I want to fix a couple of things on this one real quick. So I have this rhythm here for the chromium process rhythm, and then to the hip bone. She's actually got more muscle mass there and here, so made that leg a little too thin compared to the other one. So I just wanted to fix that real quick, because I can't let stuff go, apparently. Let's see. Iliac crest right there. Just want to make sure I have that. Okay, all right. Next one. Okay, so I just sneezed and now I have like a really stuffy nose. Okay, so this one, much more dynamic pose. Her weight is on one leg mostly, and she's kind of twisting her spine. So let's go ahead and start with the head. Just put a little circle, and then we'll do our head tilt. And we'll just put like a little indication of the face. And then look for the two main muscles in the neck that wrap around to the front, the sternocleidomastoids. And I'll find, from there you can find the pit of the neck. And then we'll do the C shape, the sweep for the clavicle. And her arms are up over her head, so you can't see the acromion process, but we know it's over here somewhere. And then using the pencil, taking a plumb line or a vertical line, we find that the crotch is somewhere along this line. I'll go ahead and measure out the 7 heads, and she might not be 7 heads, she might be 7.5 or 8 or something, but I'm going to make it 7. And then I'll divide that in half to find the location of the crotch. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we're pretty close, it looks like. So we can take out those. And normally you can just do this without having to make marks on the paper and just use your fingers, but I just wanted to show you the basic concept. And so from here we'll just take her center line from the pit of the neck to the crotch, and make a rhythm line here, and then this side here, and from this side to the crotch. And she's looking straight at us still, she's not twisting too much, so it's a pretty much straight on shot. And from the sides of the neck, I'm going to find the hip rhythm. Looks like her hips come out pretty far. Let's go ahead and take this down to the ground. So that's the weight-bearing leg. And actually, let's move that line over. I have it tucked under her too much. So I'm going to move it over to here. I'll just check the base of the foot and see where it lines up. Yeah, that looks better. And this one comes over. And now there's more, it looks like there's more weight sitting on that leg. And this side, we're going to find, the other side of the neck, we're going to find those hips. And if we did like an angle, we can find the tilt of the hips, and that's about right. Actually, her shoulders, she actually has a bit of a tilt there too. And let's go ahead and take this leg down to the ground. Let's find the base. It's somewhere pretty far out. And let's go ahead and place the shoulders. We'll just do indication with the little sphere. And we can just basic sketch in for the arms. I'm looking for elbow to elbow, kind of like sweep over to kind of line those up pretty well. It looks like it's touching her head. I'm trying to keep it light as possible. And let's do the chest cavity, the rib cage rhythm. And she's at an angle, kind of. Okay, that's good. And now we're placing the hips. So if we come down here off the rib cage, so these lines, these are guidelines, and I normally don't put them in that dark at all, super light, but I'm trying to make it show up on the camera better. So the idea is to use these as guides, but not as so much as like the final drawing. You just want to get into the ballpark, and at a certain point you'll have to abandon those lines, and especially when you're drawing in the anatomy and such, especially down here in the hips, because here the guideline finds the outside, maybe like the trochanter area, but you still have the hip bones to contend with. So at this point, I'm going to have to abandon those guidelines. I use them for what they were good for, which is the overall rhythm or set or placement of the human body. But at this point, we're just going to go ahead and leave them and explore on our own, so to speak. So here's the top of the hip bone. Come to the other side. Let's see, the rib cage comes down. It's a little bump for the rib cage. If we draw through, like this sweep here, and put a little dot, we can indicate that placement, the attachment of the Sartorius. And we can come down here and find the knees. And then we know the Sartorius, which you won't see too much on this picture, except for maybe in the contour of the body, like down right here. And then you have her adductor muscles right here. And this is the iliotibial band that attaches pretty on the other side from the Sartorius. And for the calf muscle, we have this angle like such, and also in the relationship to the vastus lateralis and medialis. The medialis sits a little bit lower than the lateralis vastus. And then we have our knee, and then this side of the calf muscle sits high, and this side goes a little bit lower. And then for the foot and the ankle, the malleolus of the tibia and the fibia sits lower than our tibia. So it creates this angle here. So you have these two opposing angles. And then we have our basic foot. Let's go back up and let's do the rhythm for the breast, and let's try to get on this same shoulder angle. And in the Reilly method, he does from the pit of the neck, wraps around, and then to the other side as well. Something like that. And I've seen other rhythms where they wrap the top. And it really just depends on what you prefer. Let me just put some indication of muscle rhythms here in the arm. Shoulder blade on the back, you can see it a little bit. And our Sartorius attachment down to the knee. I really like that rhythm. It just helps me to find the knee placement and just get everything locked in together in a nice way. Oftentimes you'll see people draw the knee kind of like a little box. And that's pretty helpful, especially when the knee is in a bent position. So we do that angle here as well. And then this foot. Can't really see her ankles too well because she's wearing shoes, but I'll just place them in anyway. So I can exaggerate the hips too. I can make them a little bit more prominent. I can put more more glute on the back, where it just catches right here and then into that tensor fascia lata, or however you're supposed to pronounce that word. Let's see. So yeah, this is just the process for using the Reilly method for figures. And let's see. I'm trying to find that center line, because the center line is a little different. Like if I'm doing the contour line of the body, it's in this pose, it's a lot different than that rhythm line that we originally put in, because that kind of used the rhythm line to draw through the form. And then if you want to do the contouring, that's what's sitting on top of the figure, on top of the surface. So it'll be different. So yeah, so that's a pretty good, quick little study. try to do like a little eye socket indication of the mouth. Maybe an ear. So anyway, so yeah, I like to do little studies like this, spend maybe 10-15 minutes on them. I usually do them a little bit smaller and just throughout over the entire page. Maybe it takes like maybe an hour and a half just to get the page filled up, and it's a really good way to practice drawing the figure and working with the Reilly rhythms. Okay, let's start off with the basic head shape. I'm just going to do like a kind of like a blocky shape to start with. Sometimes it's fun just to do like a simple block shape instead of the normal circle. And then I'm going to pull down these sternocleidomastoid rhythms into the pit of the neck. And then looks like the crotch might be about right there. I'm going to go ahead and measure these 7 heads out. So that's 2, that's 3, that's 4, 5, 6, and 7. And I'll just put a little bit extra. I'll probably make her legs a little bit longer. Let's see. So her crotch is pretty much right below her chin. So 1, 2, and 3. Let me measure. I think she might be at 3. 1, 2, 3. 4. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna bring it up just a little bit, and then I can go ahead and erase these. So I'm gonna pull this rhythm line, and her belly button probably sits right about there. Then we'll come over here and do a rhythm for the clavicle, and I also want to get the rhythm for the top of the shoulders. And then the chromium process would be about right there, and then we can pull this rhythm back down to the crotch from the chromium process, and then from this point we can just go all the way back down to her foot, which is right on the center line. I'm going to put a little curve on it, and then now we can find the angle of the hips. You can see really well on this picture the iliac crest of her hip bone, of the pelvis bone. And looks like they sit just below the belly button. And I feel like it's probably about that angle. And looking at where the hips might be, on this side and probably somewhere on this side. So let's take the rhythm from the outside of the neck down to the hips. And this is just to get us in the ballpark, right? So at some point we're going to let go of these rhythm lines and look at the anatomy and just make our adjustments. So this leg comes in and disappears behind the other one. So now we got like a basic, very basic shape of the pose. We can go ahead and put in the rib cage. Looks like the rib cage in relationship to the belly button is about right here. And comes up something like that. So we have a nice upper body structure. So I made that a little too dark. Try to keep these lines light, but I'm also trying to make them dark enough that you can see them on the camera. Let's go ahead and put in the shoulder indication with just like a little circle. And we can put in our rhythm lines for the breast using that Reilly method of coming from the pit of the neck down and wrapping around and sweeping to the other side. And then now I'm just going to kind of go in. Well, let's look at the hip bone. So this is the iliac crest, and probably comes out like so, something like this, right? And then you also have the great trochanter of the femur somewhere over here. So as we come down on this contour, it's going to be nice and smooth, and then it's going to bump over that hip bone and divot a little bit, and then it's going to wrap around that bone, and then catch the knee and the calf, and it tucks under behind the other leg. So we can take this rhythm out. And I saw an ad today when I was looking for an image to draw, and they were talking about this I forgot what they called it, but like this section right here where it divots in, or between the hip bone, the iliac crest hip bone, and that great trochanter. It was like an ad to help. I don't know what the product was or an exercise program, but it was like, get rid of this. And I was like, I don't know, they were trying to make it like sound like it was like something bad, and I was just like, dude, that's like your freaking anatomy. Like, why are you trying to get rid of it? It looks cool. So I don't know, I just thought that was weird. Like this shit they try to sell us, right? Like try to make us feel insecure, and then sell us a product that's supposedly supposed to fix their supposed problem that they created. It's like this fake problem. It's just irritating. So anyway, a little rant. I don't know why I did that. But let's go back up to, let's do this armpit as it goes into the chest cavity. And then you can't see it because she's got flowers right there, but there's probably, you can probably see a little bit of the lat. And then we'll come down on the ribs here, and then come down, catch that hip bone, and then come down, and this is going to sweep really nicely right here. See, we got the knee is this area, so we can show that vastus lateralis right here, and then I'm going to try to get like a nice sweep, and then I think this is attached to that Sartorius, just for that nice rhythm, so you can see what we're doing. And that calf muscle, down to the malleolus, so we have this rhythm, this angle on the knee, and then of course this one here, and this time I didn't mess it up, so that's good. I'm going to fix this right here. I'm going to exaggerate it. So that leg behind her is tucking in. I don't know, let's go ahead and just do some mapping with the shadows to show some of the anatomy. A little cast shadow right here. that medial side of the vastus, and our kneecap down to the tibia tuberosity, and you can kind of see the femoris, not femoris, what am I saying? The fibia right here, a little bump. That's kind of cool. And let's put the big toe in. Bam. Let's come back up here to the upper body. Let's put in the shoulders. So we got the deltoids. And it comes down on our elbow. Looks like it's right about the rib cage. That flares out. And then our hand comes down to about right here. So that's pretty much it on just a basic lay-in on a figure using the Reilly method. It's a really good exercise. I like to do these, like fill up a page of different figures, different poses and such. And let's see, rhythms, some muscle rhythms on the deltoid here. I can go ahead and do like a little extra on the head here. Yeah, so try these for like a practice and see how it works. And I hope I explained this okay. Kind of ran into some hiccups earlier on some of the concepts of the angles of the knee, and that was really embarrassing. But I think I'll just leave it in because it's kind of funny. But yeah, if you have any questions, don't hesitate and leave a comment, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. I'm pretty busy with work right now. They got us working overtime, but I'll do my best. And I really appreciate you guys watching, and happy drawing. I'll see you later. Bye.